Hello, welcome to another event of the Maryland STEM Festival 2020, our first virtual STEM festival. I have with me today Andrew Walker from the National Aquarium. How are you today, Andrew?
Doing great, Phil. Happy to be here.
Great. And he is going to talk to us about our state reptile, the Terrapin, which is also the mascot of our largest college in the state. And I don't know about you, but I love turtles and I always love hearing about turtles. So I will turn things over to Andrew and because he can tell you a lot more about turtles than I can. Thank
Excellent.
you,
Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here. I love talking terrapins. Not only are they our state reptile, as Phil said, but they are one of the most charismatic inhabitants of our Chesapeake Bay. Once you've seen a terrapin once, and after today, you will have seen quite a few, at least from my pictures. And you'll know that when you see them, you'll see them out swimming in marsh environments. And even if you're extremely lucky in the summer, you might see them coming up onto a sandy marsh beach in order to lay their eggs. Um, with me here, I have my PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to talk through, what a terrapin is, where you might find one. We'll talk a little bit about the year of a terrapin, what they're doing in summer, fall, winter, and spring. And then we'll take a look at some of the hardships and threats that threaten our terrapins before we take a look at one of our exhibits here at the National Aquarium. Now, I am Andrew, and I am an educator here at the National Aquarium. If you're looking to visit the aquarium, we're open Monday to Thursday from 9 to 4, Friday from 9 to 8, Saturday from 9 to 6, and Sunday from 9 to 5. But it's time to talk some turtles. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so we can take a look at these awesome animals. It might take me just a moment to slide over to that slideshow. Perfect. All right, so right off the bat, here are some terrapins. You might have seen them around here in the state of Maryland or in a few other places across the United States. They are a truly unique animal. They are, in fact, the only turtle in North America that lives solely in brackish environments. And when I say brackish, I mean a mix of salt water and fresh water. Now we find fresh water from the Chesapeake Bay. Those things mix to make brackish water, and we're going to see the fresh water comes from over 120 rivers and streams, and the salt water flows in from the Atlantic Ocean. It's a constantly changing, constantly churning mix of water that hardy creatures like our diamondback terrapins are able to adapt to and thrive in. Let's take a look. Now, what is a terrapin? Now, the word terrapin is kind of a funny one. It's one we might not be used to hearing, and we might call these turtles. And they are part of the turtle family, but when we say terrapin, we're talking about a very specific family of turtles. Now, turtles are found here in what is now the United States, and that is where they are native to. The term terrapin, in fact, is derived from Algonquin dialect that is and was spoken by Native American folks here on the eastern coast. And there's a few features just physically that we can see off the bat that are truly unique. They're called diamondback terrapins because of these diamond-ish shaped markings that you're going to find here on our terrapins' shells. They are an aquatic species. They're going to spend almost their entire lives swimming around in the kind of brackish, that marshy water that they really enjoy. You will occasionally see terrapins out on logs basking themselves. They, of course, like all reptiles, are kind of cold-blooded. They use the sun in order to regulate their body temperature and their activity levels. And as we look at that first thing we're going to notice are those beautiful diamond-shaped patterns on their shell, but they are unique to each individual animal. All diamondback terrapins have a diamond-ish shape on the back of their shell, but each individual mark is like a fingerprint. You won't find it on any other animal, and that goes the same for these beautiful patterns on their skin. They have this kind of grayish to whitish tint of their skin with these either black dots or lines, kind of tie-dyeing their way across their faces. And you'll see quite a lot of variability in different diamondback populations. You can have ones that are much paler and more kind of polka dotted, and of course you can have ones that have kind of a deeper grayer hue and the more of the stripes. And there are a few different subspecies of terrapins that you'll find around the east coast of the United States. There are, in fact, 7 subspecies, and I should say, of course, they are our state reptile and the mascot for our University of Maryland. And Taylor, now where would you look to find a terrapin? We've already said that you'll find them in brackish water, and you're going to find brackish water anywhere that fresh water and salt water are meeting and mixing. And a lot of times that is right along the coast. You can find terrapins all the way from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, all the way down the Atlantic coast, up into the Gulf of Mexico, and around to about Corpus Christi, Texas. And along the way there, you can find 7 different subspecies of terrapin, and a few, as those subspecies overlap, you'll find them interbreeding, intermixing, and creating some really unique turtles in those interspecies zones as well. Now, here in Maryland, we are only likely to find the northern diamondback terrapin. Specifically, that is our state reptile. And you can find that one all the way from Corpus Christi down into North Carolina. And then we get into some more subspecies as we work our way further south. So you can find these terrapins around again, anywhere with that fresh water and salt water mixing, any of these beautiful brackish water habitats. Now let's take a closer look at our terrapin, see exactly what's making them so unique. So if you take a close look at our friends here, you're going to see these nice webbed hands. And those webbed feet are what makes terrapins such strong swimmers, that along with their muscular legs. We oftentimes think of turtles as being slow-moving animals, and while terrapins aren't especially graceful on land, they can move pretty quickly when they want to. And especially once they get into the water, they have a swing motion that's kind of a mix between a doggy paddle and a breaststroke. They can propel them through the water with surprising speed. And as you take a look at that foot, you're going to see these kind of long claw-like nails. And, they're not using those for either offensive or defensive purposes, really, but they do use them when they climb out of the water. Again, both males and females will climb out to bask in the water. You can also sometimes see them basking by just kind of floating along in those bay waters. And females will use them when they come out to lay eggs. They'll come out, they'll dig a hole in the sandy beach, they'll deposit the eggs, cover them back up, and then head back into the water. And we've spent a whole bunch of time already talking about those beautiful diamond-marked shells. And the shell is kind of the defining adaptation of all of our turtle species. It's what allows them to have that kind of edge of protection that's going to be keeping them safe. And if you look towards the front, a really powerful jaws. A lot of what we'll get into the next slide is what terrapins eat. And when they have a strong jaw and a powerful beak, they can eat a lot of things you're going to find in the marsh. Once they reach their full size, in fact, there are very few things that are going to be trying to eat a full-grown terrapin. They have such a hard shell and a pretty powerful bite. And I've already mentioned before that they are just about the only turtle in North America that lives solely in these brackish water habitats, and the way that they're able to adapt to this constantly changing, semi-saltwater condition is they have a special gland near their eye, fairly similar to what we see in sea turtles, that allows them to regulate their salt levels. If they ever get too much salt, it gets too salty out there in the marsh, they can shed a little bit of salt out so it doesn't overwhelm their general body chemistry. And you kind of see these turtles, we think of turtles as being very peaceful, very calm. And again, I think they're very serene, very graceful. But these diamondback terrapins, they are carnivores. They are hunters. While a terrapin will occasionally ingest a little bit of plant material, their mainstay in their diet are other animals. Terrapins will eat snails, crabs. They'll eat small bivalves such as mussels and clams, maybe even a juvenile oyster or two. They'll eat carrion, dead animals that they might have slid down into the marsh as well. They're not very picky eaters when we get down to it. They will occasionally take a bite of fish, but a lot of their diet revolves around snails, worms, and other kind of like hard-shelled creatures like a crab. We have a little blue crab in our picture here, and well, they probably aren't going to seek out a full-grown blue crab. Once they're full-grown themselves, they can certainly take that bite should they choose to. So our terrapins, they're beautiful, they're graceful, and they are hunters out there in the world looking to get, a nice hearty meal. But like all turtles, their world starts as an egg. In the summer, a female terrapin is going to come onto one of those sandy beach environments here in the marsh, which is a really critical part of their habitat. If they don't have those nice sandy beaches, it becomes very difficult for the terrapins to properly nest. and they'll lay these eggs anywhere between May and August. Once the water gets warm enough, their activity levels are high enough. Once the female terrapins have mated with the males, they'll make it their way onto the beach between 1 and 3 times in a given year. Um, one is normal, especially for our younger terrapins, but as they get older, especially if they have really, really fit, really large turtle, you might see them nesting multiple times in a year. And they can lay anywhere between 3 and 20 eggs, but a dozen is more of your usual average. And when our terrapins are laying more than one clutch, they're going to have about 2 weeks or about 15 days in between. And my little picture here, do love showing off our terrapin actually getting in there and digging that nest. And over on the right is an x-ray that actually shows some of these terrapin eggs in here. So you can see this is a female that has quite a few eggs that they are getting ready to lay. And we'll get into the different sizes of terrapins in a moment, but this is one of the reasons why females are so much larger than males. The female terrapins need to have a lot of space in there in order to hold all those eggs. But after summer passes and the fall begins to cool, we have a chance to see one of my favorite things, which are baby terrapin hatchlings. Now, after about 45 to 70 days incubating in the nest, that's when the hatchlings are going to break out of their shell. And when they first hatch, they have a little egg sac that's connected to their bottom of their plastron, the bottom of their shell, that has a few more calories left, so they won't need to eat for the first few days of their lives. One of the most dangerous times in a terrapin's life is actually while they're still in that egg. There are so many things that would love to take a bite out of one of these diamondback terrapins. A lot of our mammalian hunters, like foxes, possums, even raccoons, will come by, dig up those eggs, and just really go to town and eat them. Some predation rates are as high as 95 or even 99%. Also, snakes and birds can really, really feast on a nest. And for some species, it actually is a really important part of their yearly cycle. It's where they get a lot of their calories throughout the year. Also, the nests of terrapins are hopefully out in a nice sandy beach, still warm throughout the year so they can incubate. And the temperature of that nest is what determines the sex of the terrapin. We have a saying, we call it hot chicks and cool dudes. If that nest temperature is a little bit higher, we're going to have a much higher concentration of females, and that nest temperature is just a few degrees lower, you're going to see a much higher percentage of males. Um, just a kind of a quirk of where they get laid can also determine, how many males, how many females. If there's a lot of shade nearby, you're going to have a batch that has a lot of males. And if it's out in the open where the sun can beat down on them, you're going to have a lot of females in that clutch. And the majority of terrapins do hatch at the beginning of fall, again, about a month and a half after they're laid in the summer. But there are some that decide to overwinter inside the nest. If they're laid kind of late in August, by the time they're hatching, it's already starting to feel the cool off of September or October. And if that's the case, after they hatch, the terrapin hatchlings are actually going to stay in the nest, enter a period of prolonged inactivity in the nest once they've hatched, and wait for the next spring so they can go ahead and emerge and start to feed and grow. Like a lot of reptiles, winter is a really a slow time for terrapins. For here in Maryland, from October to March, it is likely to see some really low activity from terrapins. Their metabolism slow down. Again, they're cold-blooded animals, so they're getting a lot of that heat that they need to regulate their bodies from the sun. And when they don't have that, they kind of slow down all their body processes in order to accept that change in nature. And it's mainly when we see the water change, the water temperature changes, that we're going to see that large change in the activity of our terrapins. And a lot of them, they will bury themselves in the mud and they'll stay down there for months at a time. It's not a true hibernation, I wouldn't say. They will occasionally wake up if the temperature swells up in one of our little hot spurts here in the winter. But for the most part, they're going to be tucked away, heartbeats and oxygen levels slow to a crawl until they reach that renewed activity they're going to find in spring. And that's when the world of the marsh comes alive again in spring. Our terrapins will have ample opportunities to feed on these freshly reinvigorated habitats. But all that eating, you're going to see a lot of growing. And as we can see in this picture, we have a full-grown male and a full-grown female. The females can get a whole lot bigger than the males, and in large part, that is because they need to be able to carry those clutches of eggs. The males just don't simply have that burden on them, so they're going to stay a lot smaller. Male terrapins shells usually average between 4 to 6 inches long from head to tail, while females start at around 6 inches and go up to 9 inches in length. And once they get to that full size, they could be there for quite some time. Terrapins have a lifespan in the wild of up to 40 years. That is a truly incredible feat for an animal so small. They can live out there for a extremely long time, which is one of the reasons I find them so kind of enthralling. They have, these long lifespans that, span several decades of them swimming, eating, living these incredible terrapin lives. Um, Also of note here is their age of maturation. The males usually mature after about 4 to 7 years, and while the females are a little bit slower, because again, they do have to get a whole lot bigger to have those eggs, they won't mature until 8 or 13 years on average. If terrapins are held in captivity, if they have long, stable, warm periods, they can grow a lot faster than the average, and you could even see females grab it in about half that time if the conditions happen to be just right. But unfortunately, it's not all smooth sailing for terrapins. There are several threats that we're going to go over to these animals that really are concerning for folks like me who care a lot about them. One represented by our construction site here is just simple habitat destruction. Terrapins need these wonderful marsh habitats that aren't always highly valued by us. We tend to develop them instead of leaving them in their untouched state. And that can create a lot of problems, can really increase the erosion. Our wetlands have a whole lot of special things they do for us that a lot of times we just take for granted. And the terrapins, along with really all of our animals, really rely on us to make some equitable decisions about how we're using the land around us. My terrapin down here who's trying to cross a road is an example of another common fatality of terrapins, and that's crossing road. Females, when they come out of the marsh and they can't immediately find a nice sandy beach, will sometimes kind of clamber across the land looking for areas that are going to be soft enough for them to dig up and deposit those eggs. So occasionally, we unfortunately see terrapins that get hit by cars as they're trying to find areas that have that nice sandy beach environment. And my two friends hanging out here in a crab pot are the unfortunate victims of one of the #1 killers of adult terrapins, and that are crab pots. Recreational crab pots are, of course, baited to lure in blue crab, one of Marylanders' favorite meals. But blue crabs and terrapins have a little bit of overlap in what they like to eat. Terrapins love eating a little bit of carrion, and they will certainly take, the chicken necks or leftover scraps that folks like to bait their blue crab traps with. Unfortunately, though terrapins can get into a lot of these crab traps, they cannot get out. And unlike blue crabs, they need to surface in order to breathe oxygen. Those crabs have gills and they're just fine staying underwater for much longer periods of time. So unfortunately, terrapins can drown in these crab traps. Fortunately, we have a solution for this. We call them bycatch reduction devices, or I personally like terrapin excluder devices, TEDs. And these are little orange insets you can put on your crab pots to stop terrapins from entering them. Just a simple fix can really save a lot of terrapin lives. There's really important things that anyone who lives along the water, who likes to put in a crab pot to grab some dinner, can do to help protect these incredible animals that hopefully you love at least nearly as much as I do. I know I have a little bit of a head start on you there. Another way that terrapins can be conserved is something we call head starting. Here at the National Aquarium, I am the coordinator for our Head Start program um, that places terrapins from Poplar Island. So this is Poplar Island It is an island off the coast of Maryland in the Chesapeake Bay. It is right near Tillman Island and has been under construction by the folks at the Port of Baltimore, the Corps of Engineers, the Maryland Department of Transportation have been doing beautiful restoration work there for quite a few years now. Creating habitat that had previously eroded away, slowly reconstituting it, and it has been a wonderful place for a lot of species. It's a great egret and heron nursery, and thankfully for us, terrapins thrive there as well. So in the Head Start program, what we do is try to give some of these terrapins a head start in life. And so we place them in schools throughout Maryland so that they are able to grow and thrive and hopefully inspire a lot of young conservationists. During that time, since they're in a classroom during what would normally be an inactive winter period, they're eating and growing, and they can be quite a bit larger upon release in the spring than their wild counterparts. That'll hopefully give our, habitats, our, population a little bump along the way towards being the really robust population we'd like to see here in the Chesapeake Bay. Of course, these kind of population boosting methods like head starting only work if you already have a restored habitat. There's never going to be an end to the efforts we need to conserve and create habitats that we can really be proud of for these animals. And this Poplar Island is just one great step along that path that really doesn't have an end, which is great. It's something that we can always strive towards and strive for to make a better world for these animals all around us. But seeing as we have a nice habitat for our terrapins, we have a lot of dedicated research staff that help this project. I'm going to shout out real quick my friends at Arlington Echo, Maryland Environmental Service, and of course, Dr. Rusenberg over at the University of Ohio, whose scientific staff goes out and does terrapin surveys. So when Dr. Rusenberg and a lot of his grad students are out on the island, they're looking throughout the summer for terrapin nests. They can see the telltale signs of a terrapin who's just dug a hole. They'll go find them, they mark these spots, and they note where they are and, of course, when these eggs were laid. And after the appropriate time has elapsed, they'll put the protective measures in place to make sure that these nests are still fully inhabited by healthy terrapin eggs, so they can have enough time to come to gestation and they can hatch. Once they hatch, these terrapins will get to come in. They get a tag that is implanted underneath the skin, and then many of them are released back into wild as part of a control population. Others take a journey to Maryland classrooms across our state. And I just love looking at pictures of little terrapins, so I might take a little time just to check these out. These are terrapins from last year during the 2019-2020 school year. So terrapins get to hang out in our schools, and the hope there is not only that these terrapins will grow up big and strong, but also all the folks who interact with them, the teachers and classrooms that care for them, and the students that spend time collecting data that is used in real scientific experiments will really grow to love these animals and love the Chesapeake Bay and the process of doing science and taking conservation-focused actions. After a full, or almost a full school year, we have to let them go in the spring. These terrapins will be released back into the wild, and they get pretty large. This is in a year, a terrapin. This is Tiny right here, who has grown to be quite a hefty gal. So she has an excellent chance of surviving out in the wild, which is one of the goals of this program, of course, is to make or to create the conditions that these animals can really thrive in. I got one more nice big turtle to represent the final part of our program here at the Head Starting is that the scientists are working on this island all the time. They're constantly checking in on terrapins that they capture around the island, and from the tags that were put in them when they're just little hatchlings, we can tell, what the terrapin's medical history was when it was part of this program. We can constantly be analyzing our methodology and making sure that we're providing the best conservation effort possible. This happens to be a terrapin that was part of our program for quite some time. It was released after its arrival, and about 4 years later was captured. And after 4 years, this female terrapin was already laying her first nest, which means these conservation efforts have a possibility of being really beneficial and kind of jump-starting these terrapins' lives. But I think I will stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can see your faces. I have a few things to show you here, just some of my terrapin props, and then we're going to be taking a visit over to one of our exhibits. And I just have a terrapin shell. Just want to show you what one looks like in real life. This is a typical size for a full-grown male terrapin. And for folks who aren't as familiar with turtles, anytime you're seeing a turtle, you're seeing actually part of their spine right here. Their spine connects to their shell. It provides them that wonderful protection. It also means that a terrapin or a turtle, while it's alive, will not be leaving its shell. It is fully a part of their body. There are some turtles like a box turtle that kind of have a hinge on their plastron on the bottom of their shell that they can use to close this, keep predators at bay. Our terrapins are not part of that family, so they'll always have part of their body exposed, so where they can run and swim around. That's part of the charm of these animals. Again, it's kind of a low, kind of streamlined design right here, and there's plenty of room here for their legs, both front and back, so you can really get a lot of power into those swimming strokes. Even though we usually think of turtles as being rather slow, these terrapins have quite little speed in them when they get moving. And I like to think of terrapins, and this is not a fully scientific take, but they're kind of built a little bit like miniature sea turtles. They have the same kind of lines to their body that help them be hydrodynamic, help them be effective swimmers and effective predators. Now, in just a moment here, I would love to take you out over to our Chesapeake Marsh exhibit, where we'll hopefully get the chance to see some of our gals in action. Of course, terrapins are diurnal animals, so we'll hopefully have them moving around quite a bit for us here. All right, we ready to go there, Phil?
Yes, I am. So my son was one of the students who was in that popular program, the Popular Island program. He went to Wild Lake Middle School. And at Wild Lake, he was one of the kids who was fortunate enough to take care of the turtles. And one of the end results of that is that we ended up getting our own turtle. This is my turtle, Joe. Joe, named after Noah's baseball coach at the time, is an Asian box turtle. And how she is different from other turtles is that she can completely seal herself off. I'm told she's the only species of turtle that can do that. I'm not an expert, so I'm just going on what I've been told. But I'm told that Joe is the only turtle that can completely seal herself off, that there's no way when she wants to be shut off from the world that you can get to her. She seems to be coming out a little bit. We keep her in a pool, a little kiddie pool in a room with her. And then we also have built an outside tent for her. I'm sorry, an outside pen so that she can walk around. We try to give her as much freedom as she can. We've turtle proofed our house, so she pretty much has full range of the house and can go wherever she wants. And she's a little bit on the shy side. You're fortunate to seeing a lot of her head. She normally doesn't come out this much, but I guess she wants to see all the friends, and I guess she likes the computer and she likes hearing about the Terrapins, one of her cousins. And she has been a great pet. We have had her for about 10 years now. So we think or have heard or read that she'll live to be 40 to 60. So my son may get her back because she very likely will outlive me. She is a very healthy young lady. We take her to the vet regularly. She eats shrimp, the dried shrimp we feed her. I used to feed her the other type of turtle food, and then she just stopped eating it and she only wanted shrimp. And we also keep some live guppies in the tank with her to help feed her and also help keep the tank clean. And it works very well that the guppies, and she gets along with the guppies. She eats them when she can. They are very fast, so she doesn't get them right away, but she does enjoy the guppies. And something else she enjoys is strawberries. She really loves strawberries. If I put a strawberry in her tank, she will wolf it down in no time. So she comes out whenever she wants to out of her tank. I take her out at least once a day, and either let her walk around the house, or when it's decent out, I will take her outside to walk in her pen. So that's a little bit about Joe, and I'm going to turn the program back to Andrew.
All right, thank you very much, Phil. It's great meeting Joe. So, friends, I'm up in our Chesapeake Marsh exhibit here at the National Aquarium. And just like a real Chesapeake Marsh, this area is dominated by all this lovely grass. Marsh is a type of wetland, and a wetland is not trying to trick you. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is a land that experiences a whole lot of water. It stays throughout the year. And along with our terrapins, who I'll highlight in a moment, we have a few other characteristic denizens down here. Of course, we have our oyster clusters, which are not only a resident of a marsh, but they're also a primary habitat builder. A lot of our other small species you might see flitting about in the back there. We have some mummy-chog minnows off to the side here. There's a few skillet fish around the back, and there will be a few blennies and gobies who like to hide right inside of these oysters, which really makes them a great piece of habitat for all these different animals. But I will show us over to the star of our show. This is, let me take, oh, yes, this is Shelly right here. We have two terrapins that are in this exhibit, one by the name of Shelly, the other by the name of Kara, Terrapins for short. And this is a pretty typical position for Shelly. She likes to kind of just relax in the corner here. She's up a bit so she can breathe. She doesn't have to hold her breath. So you will see her sometimes quite still, almost like she's taking a nap underneath the water. And I'm going to get nice and close so you can see that beautiful shell. Now, when terrapins are first born, you can, for a while, accurately track how old they are by how many of these diamond markings you're seeing on their body. But as they get older, those growth lines get harder and harder to read as they kind of blend together. Now, but Kara here is not an old turf. She's still a young gal and still has a lot of exciting years left. You can often see her swimming around this exhibit. She really has the run of the place. It's just Kara, the other terrapin, are the only large animals you'll find in here. And I'll just give you a nice close look at that really beautiful patterned skin you'll find here. Let's move that way a little bit. That's our girl right there. Really, it's fun to see when they feed her. They feed her just nice big chunks of crab that she really just enjoys taking nice big bites of. So zoom myself around. But there's a few more things that I'd love to talk to you about, and I'll do it with the background here. And if our friend decides to show back up, we can take a nice look at her as she swims behind me. Because one of the things I want to highlight to everyone here is there are so many people that are needed to make this conservation effort possible, which means no matter what your skill set or your interests are, there's a part that you can play in keeping animals like this diamondback terrapin alive and well. It's not just folks who love turtles, who are turtle scientists who are a big part in this. It takes a lot of us. Out on Poplar Island during the actual restoration work on the island, we have construction foremen, we have planners out there. There are business people who help fund these efforts. And we have all sorts of folks do all the physical building to make these habitats possible. Because remember, there's no point in helping out these animals on the population end if we don't have a place for them to live, if we don't have a habitat to release them to. And so there's lots of folks on that end to help make this possible. And of course, if you are interested in the science, there are so many biologists and just ecologists that make this work possible. There are folks who stay on the island just about all year round who go out collecting samples of the water, making sure everything's still shipshape on that end, and also the folks who go out and collect terrapins both in the summer when they look for nests, and also when they go out and just collect adult terrapins to see how the population is doing. And of course, you have silly folks like myself who like to make sure that everyone knows what these things are happening, folks who like communicating these efforts out to all the folks out in the world. Because I think the more people who know about this kind of work, the more people who are really passionate about it, the better chance we have of making a really wonderful habitat for all of these animals. And if you are of a more naval bent, of course, Poplar Island is an island, and we need boats to get there. So that's another big part of our operation out on the island. So if you're someone who likes to drive a boat, well, you have yourself a way to help with these conservation movements. And here at the National Aquarium, there are hundreds of careers. There's the folks who take care of the animals themselves. There's folks like me who teach classes about them. And there's also a million folks who work in jobs that we don't always think of when we think of conservation. But there's so many business ends of this program that we really need in order to properly run as an aquarium and as a conservation organization. Everyone from the accountants to the social media managers and everything in between. This is all one joint effort, and there really is a place for everyone here in conservation, especially here in terrapin conservation, which I, of course, am a really big fan of. And I'm really proud of our Terrapin in the Classroom program, our Head Start program that we mentioned earlier. We've released hundreds of terrapins, and more than that, we've inspired thousands of students through this program, and that's only in the last few years. We have so much more to do and so much more that we can do as long as there's lots of folks like you hopefully getting inspired to help out these terrapins. I'll just do one more swirl around and see if we can find Shelly doing anything more interesting than taking her nap in the corner. Not that there's anything wrong with taking a nap. She, of course, had a nice big day of swimming around in our tank. And that really is, again, a beautiful and unique shell. There's not another one like it in the world. There's nobody quite like our friend Shelly here. So I want to thank everybody for joining in with me on my Terrapin Talk here. I appreciate each and every one of y'all taking the time, take a moment for these amazing animals. So I appreciate you and have a great rest of your night.